The second week of our Fantastic Four season in Marvel Snap is underway. We had an OTA update making some small changes around the edges. Let's go ahead and dive on into my best decks roundup for this week, covering the decks I personally have been enjoying and finding the most success with, as well as what's doing well on the public trackers. We kick things off with a new iteration on a classic archetype Kitty, Angela, Elsa here. Kitty Pryde bouncing in and out of turn every play can make Angela larger while also powering up herself thanks to Elsa Bloodstone and Galacta's triggers. This archetype really loves our recent 2 energy cards, Mr. Fantastic First Steps, as well as Surge that can make things cheaper. Taking Kitty and hitting her with either of these triggers, reducing her to 0 energy, makes it hyper efficient for you to bounce in and out of play each turn. For the games where Pryde is nowhere to be found, we're leveraging Mysterio alongside Sasquatch as an alternative way to add stats to the board. Mysterio fills our locations up cleanly, allowing Elsa Bloodstone to spread her bonus out over multiple locations, and Sasquatch is a very efficient stat stick that we can typically play out for 1 or 2 energy on the last turn of the game, alongside something like Enchantress to have a little bit of disruption for whatever our opponent is doing. Bass Bounce continues to be one of my happy places while playing Marvel Snap, and this archetype loves Mr. Fantastic as well as Surge as well. Every time either of these cards gives a cost reduction to hit Monkey or Beast, letting me play it out for 2 energy, it just reminds me of those lovely formats past where these cards were cheaper to begin with. Bast is excellent here, allowing you to power up things like Sable and Hood that would normally not have a lot of points to start. This deck list tends to be very resilient into opposing tech cards like Killmonger and Shang-Chi, since if you play it well, you can typically duck priority on the board, but Cosmo is one to watch out for as you're leveraging a lot of on reveals for the points that you're adding. Moving along to our high potential category, Dracula Discard is putting up the best stats among discard decks for the first time in a long while. While it's possible that Bullseye is a bit worse after losing a point of power, I would wager discard enjoyers are simply looking to explore other things after the perception of that other archetype getting a bit worse. This deck list did gain Khonshu as a meaningful pick up here that allows you to play Corvus Glaive, because this way, if Corvus been something important like your Modoc or your Dracula, Khonshu's able to reanimate it, still letting you kind of have your cake and eat it too, of the extra energy that Corvus can provide while having insurance that you're still going to have access to your important cards should he accidentally be binning them instead of one of your discard payoffs. Another classic Marvel Snap archetype putting up numbers for the first time in a while is a more traditional movement deck. No bouncers to be had here, just sliding your cards all around the board for fun and profit. Notable inclusions here are Topaz and Hellion as more recent move enablers, with Hellion being quite potent as a one-sided cloak, often leaving your opponent guessing where your stuff is going to end up at, especially when it's used in tandem with Heimdall. The other thing worth pointing out here is that this deck list is playing Cosmo as well as Alioth. While these cards are disruptive to your opponent in important matchups, their primary job here is to ensure that the opponent's copies of cards like Shang-Chi and Shadow King are not able to break the big sandcastles that we're building. Cosmo in particular is quite good in this deck list when you deploy her to the Madam Web lane, since this allows your Cosmo to kind of be simultaneously covering all of your lanes at once, leaving your opponent guessing where will their tech card work and where will it be quite inept. Our next high potential deck list this week is quite the brew, featuring Lockjaw and Galactus. Lockjaw was reworked to activate, and not this most recent OTA, but the one before it, making it so your next card played anywhere gets substituted out for a different card at random in your deck. This gives you a really excellent curve of Lockjaw on 2 into Electro on 3, letting you completely get rid of Electro's body, negating its downside ongoing effect while still benefiting from the extra energy it provides. In a crazy high roll scenario, that Electro could be spinning into a Galactus, letting you blow away the rest of the board on that third turn of the game. When you don't have Lockjaw lined up to mitigate Electro, this deck is playing Blink as well as Circe to allow you to either swap his body out yet again, occasionally for a Galactus in the case of Blink, or just upgrading it into something more meaningful on the 4 energy slot with Circe, while again mitigating that downside. One of the appeals of this type of Galactus deck is that you're not all in on the big bad. There's going to be games where your extra energy allows you to slam Red Hulks and Alioths and even Mercury plus Cannonball to 1-2 punch your opponent to win a more fair game of Marvel Snap. While Mirage only got a single point of power in our recent OTA update, her text box change making it so she only hits characters is pretty meaningful in all of your matchups that involve Merlin, because now you're guaranteed to be getting something that's cheap that you can put that +2 power on to be playing out. There are a huge variety of these Victoria Hand Frigga variations that are finding success on the public tracker, and I've played with a number of them as well and highlighted them on my secondary channel. This particular deck list is a mixture of the largest sample size as well as the best performing from the varying competitive slices that I looked at. I will say something that I really like in particular about this deck list is that you're not all in on Victoria Hand. We notably have copies of Shadow King and Shang-Chi, so that way in the matchups where your linear points of power aren't enough to keep up, you can be disrupting whatever your opponent has going on. Our last high potential deck list this week is an amalgamation of some of my favorite cards in the game. We have Moon Girl doubling up 1 energy cards that Black Swan can make completely free. We have She-Hulk that can slam down as a 1 or even free energy 10 power card, and we have Hitmonkey kind of tying the whole room together. I had a ton of fun when I played this deck list on my live stream. Of course, I also ended up naming it Please Don't Mobius Me, because this deck list definitely folds over like a wet paper bag if your opponent plays that hateful tech card. Speaking of Mobius M. Mobius, as we break into the top performers, i.e. deck lists that have a proven track record of being powerful in Marvel Snap and have good stats after our most recent OTA, we have what I can only describe as Toxic Wiccan. In addition to Mobius, this deck list is also leveraging Shadow King, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, Alioth, and even Mercury plus Cannonball to be able to break your opponent's stuff in a variety of ways. Quicksilver at the bottom end, along with a solid curve of 2 into 3 energy plays, means that you can often Wiccan consistently on turn 4. And while this deck list isn't playing a ton of 5s and 6s, it leverages that extra energy well at the end of the game, allowing you to play out multiple cheap cards in tandem with something like an Alioth when that's best for closing things out. Iron Patriot is also a stellar include in here because it kind of serves a double purpose of being a 2 energy card you can play early, having Quicksilver to back it up so you can often win its lane, and then giving you an extra bomb to play out with Wiccan energies in the final moments. Next up, we have Human Torch First Steps making an expected appearance inside of our best performing Silver Surfer shell. It's the top performing deck list this week. The Surfer archetype has absolutely loved the addition of Mr. Fantastic alongside Surge. Having either of these cost reducers drop one of your 3s down to a 2 means that you can play 2 3s on turn 5 or a 4 plus a 3 on the last turn of the game, giving you a lot of flexibility and power. It's worth calling out that this Surfer deck list, like a number of the ones performing well, is leveraging the Fenris Wolf package alongside Warhead and Killmonger, as well as Shang-Chi at the top end of your curve to allow you to break your opponent's stuff and take that power for your own. As it puts up solid metrics for another week in a row, the Merlin Werewolf by Night Century Annihilus variation here is getting upgraded from high potential to a top performer. This deck list is a good at putting out points in a variety of locations while also keeping your opponent guessing exactly where your werewolf is going to end up at. Merlin spells, along with Yellow Jacket, allow you to flip werewolf around the board in a way that's often unexpected, allowing it to get into spots and move in extra ways that your opponent's going to have a hard time accounting for. The small clog sub-theme is also incredibly disruptive as well, in tandem with something like Shadow King to allow you to blow away your opponent's stats. Finally, there's been so much fuss in the community about Fantasticar being a pay to win element with its addition to the Super Premium Pass that I wanted to go ahead and throw this deck list up here at the end of this week's roundup. You'll see this deck list is simply in the category "this exists" because none of the metrics for this deck make it powerful enough in the competitive slices to meet any of the top performing categories that I talked about earlier in this video. While this deck doesn't have terrible metrics by any means, it's solidly middle of the pack, even after it got a buff on Doom 2099 and Marvel Boy, and this is the best performing Fantasticar deck in the most competitive slices on Untapped. So while this card is certainly not terrible or unplayable, it doesn't seem to be meta breaking, and I certainly wouldn't describe it as pay to win, even if it is more than a little annoying for many people that it's locked behind a paywall like the regular season pass card. Marvel Snap definitely feels like they've hit their balanced stride in the middle part of this year. Our formats have been consistently varied, and I don't think I've had a most popular category inside of this video in a while. All of the competitive slices on the Untapped tracker are showing the deck list that I'm highlighting in videos like this one with play rates under 5%. It really seems like you can be playing whatever you want and finding success with it in the metagames of the late, and that matches my anecdotal experience as well, focusing on things like Bounce and Kitty Pryde that don't even hit on the stats that I'm covering these other deck lists from the public tracker. As always, I would love to hear what deck lists you're finding success with in the comments down below. If you enjoyed my roundup this week, make sure to smash that like button. I appreciate everybody that made it all the way through to the end of the video, and I hope your next snap pack is an excellent one.